Maria Santos stepped off the military transport bus, her worn sneakers hitting the dusty ground of Fort Henderson. The morning sun blazed overhead as she clutched her acceptance letter, the paper now creased from countless nervous foldings. At 19, she was about to become the first woman in her family to attend the prestigious Military Leadership Academy. The other recruits around her looked confident, their expensive luggage and polished boots telling stories of preparation she couldn't afford. Maria's single duffel bag contained everything she owned that mattered. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to help pay for the application fees, and her younger brother had given up his birthday money to buy her the required textbooks. As she walked toward the registration building, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Eyes followed her movement with curiosity, mixed with something else she couldn't quite name. The academy had only recently opened its doors to women, and she was among the first group of female cadets in the institution's 50-year history. "Look at that," whispered a tall boy with perfectly styled hair. "They really are letting anyone in now." His friends chuckled, not bothering to lower their voices. Maria pretended not to hear, focusing on the flagpole ahead where the American flag snapped proudly in the wind. Inside the registration hall, the whispers grew louder. Maria approached the check-in table where a stern-faced woman in uniform sat with a clipboard. The woman's name tag read Sergeant Mills. Behind her, a large photograph showed rows of previous graduating classes, all men in perfect formation. "Name?" Sergeant Mills asked without looking up. "Maria Santos, reporting for duty." Maria replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The sergeant's eyes lifted, scanning Maria from head to toe. "You sure you're in the right place, girl? The nursing school is across town." Heat rushed to Maria's cheeks, but she maintained eye contact. "I'm here for the Military Leadership Academy. I have my acceptance letter." Several male cadets nearby exchanged glances and smirked. One of them, a muscular boy with a crew cut, stepped closer. "This should be interesting," he muttered to his friend. "Wonder how long she'll last." Sergeant Mills took the letter, examined it with obvious skepticism, then stamped it harder than necessary. "Dormitory assignments are posted on that board. You'll be in the new women's wing. Try not to get lost." As Maria walked away, she heard fragments of conversations following her. "Doesn't belong here. Probably some diversity quota. My dad says women will ruin the academy's reputation." Each comment was like a small stone thrown at her back. But she kept walking. The dormitory was a long, gray building that looked like it had been hastily constructed as an afterthought. The women's wing consisted of just 1 floor with 10 rooms. Maria found her assigned room and discovered she would be sharing it with 3 other girls who hadn't arrived yet. She unpacked her few belongings into the metal locker, hanging up her 2 uniforms and placing her mother's rosary on the small shelf. Through the thin walls she could hear laughter and loud conversations from the main building, where the male cadets were settling in. That evening at dinner, Maria sat with the other new female cadets at a table near the corner of the mess hall. The boys filled the rest of the large room, their voices echoing off the walls as they shared stories and formed quick friendships. Every few minutes, someone would glance over at the girls' table and whisper something that made his friends laugh. "They're waiting for us to fail," said Jennifer, a quiet girl from Oregon who spoke for the first time since arrival. "My brother graduated from here 5 years ago. He told me it would be tough, but this feels like we're under a microscope." Maria nodded, picking at her meatloaf. She had expected challenges, but not this constant feeling of being an unwelcome visitor in someone else's house. Every step she took felt watched and judged. After dinner, as the cadets dispersed to their dormitories, Maria overheard a group of boys talking near the entrance. "Give it 2 weeks," one said confidently. "These girls will be crying to go home." The academy isn't a place for the weak. Maria's jaw tightened. She had grown up helping her father repair cars in his small garage, often lifting heavy parts and working long hours in the heat. She had run 5 miles every morning for 2 years to prepare for this moment. Weak was the last thing she was. But as she lay in her narrow bunk that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of military life around her, doubt crept in like cold air through a crack in the window. The whispers she had heard today were just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring physical training, academic challenges, and more opportunities for her fellow cadets to prove their point. She thought about her mother's words before she left home. "Mija, you carry our family's dreams with you. Show them what we're made of." Maria closed her eyes and made a silent promise. No matter what they whispered about her, No matter how out of place they tried to make her feel, she would prove that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. The alarm bell shattered the pre-dawn silence at exactly 500 hours. Maria jolted awake, her heart racing as she remembered where she was. Around her, the other female cadets fumbled in the darkness, trying to dress quickly in their physical training uniforms. Outside their window, they could hear the thunderous sound of boots hitting pavement as the male cadets formed up for morning exercises. "Move, move, move," shouted Drill Sergeant Patterson from the hallway. His voice carried the authority of 20 years in the military. "Fall in formation in 3 minutes or you'll be running extra laps." Maria laced up her running shoes with shaking fingers. She had practiced this routine hundreds of times at home, but everything felt different under pressure. The other girls looked just as nervous, their faces pale in the fluorescent lighting. They rushed outside to find the male cadets already in perfect formation, standing at attention with military precision. The girls quickly found their designated spot at the back of the group, trying to match the posture and bearing of their classmates. Drill Sergeant Patterson walked slowly along the ranks, his sharp eyes catching every imperfection. When he reached the female cadets, he stopped and studied them with obvious disapproval. "Well, well," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like we have some special guests joining us today." Snickers rippled through the male cadets. Maria kept her eyes straight ahead, but she could feel the weight of dozens of stares on her back. "Today we start with a simple 5-mile run," Patterson announced. "This will separate the soldiers from the civilians real quick." His eyes lingered on the girls. "Anyone who can't keep up gets to explain to me why they think they deserve to be here." The run began at a punishing pace. Maria had trained for this, but the combination of altitude, nervousness, and the pressure to prove herself made breathing difficult. Around her, some of the male cadets seemed to glide effortlessly over the terrain, their conversation casual despite the speed. "Think any of the girls will make it past the first mile?" asked a voice behind her. "Doubt it," came the reply. "My money says the little one with dark hair drops out first." Maria realized they were talking about her. Her legs burned and sweat poured down her face, but she pushed harder. She passed several male cadets who had started strong but were now struggling. By the 3rd mile, she was running in the middle of the pack, her breathing steady and controlled. The finish line came into view, and Maria found herself among the first 20 cadets to complete the course. She bent over, hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. Around her, several boys who had been so confident earlier were still struggling to cross the line. "Not bad for a civilian," said a voice beside her. She looked up to see David Chen, one of the cadets who had made comments about her the previous day. His tone was different now, grudging respect replacing the earlier mockery. But the morning's challenges weren't over. Next came the obstacle course, a series of walls, ropes, and barriers designed to test strength, agility, and determination. Maria watched as cadet after cadet attacked the course with varying degrees of success. When her turn came, she approached the first obstacle, a 10-foot wall that required upper body strength to scale. The crowd of watching cadets grew quiet, waiting to see if she would fail at this obvious test of physical power. Maria had spent months strengthening her arms, knowing this moment would come. She grabbed the rope, pulled herself up with steady determination, and swung her leg over the top. The technique wasn't pretty, but it was effective. She dropped down the other side and moved to the next challenge. The rope climb proved more difficult. Halfway up, her grip began to slip, and she could hear whispered comments from below. "Come on, just give up already." "This is embarrassing to watch." Maria's arm shook with exhaustion, but she thought of her mother working late into the night at the diner, saving every tip to help pay for this opportunity. With a grunt of effort, she pulled herself the final few feet and rang the bell at the top. The watching cadets fell silent. A few even nodded with what looked like approval. But the real test came during combat training exercises. The instructor, Sergeant Rodriguez, paired cadets for hand-to-hand combat practice. When Maria was matched with Brandon Walsh, a stocky cadet who outweighed her by 50 pounds, the whispers started again. "This is going to be ugly," someone said. "She's going to get hurt." Brandon looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should find her a different partner," he suggested to the instructor. "No special treatment," Sergeant Rodriguez replied firmly. "Size isn't everything in combat. Let's see what both of you have learned." The match began cautiously. Brandon clearly didn't want to hurt Maria, holding back his strength and telegraphing his moves. But Maria had learned to fight smart, not just hard. She used his hesitation against him, slipping past his guard and using leverage and technique to take him down. The watching cadets erupted in surprised shouts. Brandon hit the mat hard, the wind knocked out of him. He looked up at Maria with genuine surprise and something that might have been respect. "Lucky shot," called out Jake Morrison, the muscular boy who had made comments on the first day. "Let's see her do that again. You want to try next?" Maria asked, still breathing hard but standing tall. The challenge hung in the air between them. Jake looked around at his friends, realizing he had painted himself into a corner. To back down would make him look weak, but to fight a girl in front of everyone carried its own risks. Before he could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "What's all this commotion about?" Everyone turned to see Colonel Harrison approaching, his uniform pristine and his bearing commanding instant respect. The cadets immediately snapped to attention. Colonel Harrison's presence changed everything. He was the Academy's commanding officer, a decorated veteran whose reputation preceded him. His word was law within these walls, and his approval could make or break a cadet's future. He walked slowly through the group, his eyes taking in the scene. When his gaze settled on Maria, still standing over the fallen Brandon, his expression was unreadable. "Interesting," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every cadet present. "Very interesting indeed." Colonel Harrison's unexpected appearance sent a ripple of tension through the training yard. Every cadet stood frozen, unsure whether they were about to witness discipline or praise. The colonel walked with measured steps, his polished boots clicking against the concrete as he surveyed the scene. "Carry on with the exercise," he commanded, but instead of leaving, he positioned himself at the edge of the training area to observe. His presence made everyone acutely aware of their performance, but Maria felt the weight of his attention more than anyone. Over the following days, a pattern emerged. During weapons training, when Maria consistently hit targets that others missed, the colonel would appear silently in the doorway. When she excelled in tactical strategy sessions, correctly identifying weaknesses in battle plans that stumped her male counterparts, he would be there watching with those penetrating gray eyes. The other cadets began to notice. Their whispered comments took on a new edge of resentment mixed with confusion. "Why is the colonel always watching her?" became the question that followed Maria through the corridors. Jake Morrison, still smarting from her public challenge, became the unofficial leader of her critics. "She thinks she's special," he told his friends during meals. "Probably has connections or something. There's no way she got here on merit alone." The rumors grew more elaborate each day. Some claimed Maria's family had political connections. Others suggested she was part of some secret government program. The truth, that she was simply a hard-working girl from a poor family who had earned her place through dedication, seemed too simple for them to accept. During academic classes, the divide became even more apparent. Maria had always been a strong student, but the military academy's curriculum was demanding. Advanced mathematics, military history, international relations, and strategic planning filled their days. While some cadets struggled with the intellectual demands, Maria thrived. In Professor Williams' military history class, she correctly analyzed the tactical failures that led to historical defeats, offering insights that impressed even the instructor. "Excellent observation, Cadet Santos," Professor Williams said after Maria explained why a famous general's strategy had doomed his army. "You understand that victory often comes from preparation, not just courage." The comment was innocent enough, but it sparked fresh resentment among some of her classmates. "Teacher's pet," someone whispered. "Probably studied all night while we were doing push-ups." What they didn't know was that Maria did study while they slept, often reading by flashlight long after lights out. She couldn't afford to be just good enough. She had to be better than everyone else to prove she deserved to be there. The pressure intensified during the Academy's first major evaluation. Each cadet had to complete a comprehensive test covering everything they had learned so far: physical fitness, weapons proficiency, tactical knowledge, and leadership potential. The results would determine their ranking within the class and could affect their entire military career. Maria approached the evaluation with quiet determination. She had prepared for months, knowing this moment would be crucial. The physical components went well. She finished the obstacle course in record time and scored expert marksman on the rifle range. Her tactical analysis impressed the evaluators, and her leadership exercise showed natural command ability. But it was during the final component, an unexpected crisis simulation, that Maria truly distinguished herself. The scenario involved a simulated attack on a supply convoy with casualties and equipment failures, complicating the response. Each cadet had to take command and coordinate a rescue mission under pressure. When Maria's turn came, she quickly assessed the situation, identified priorities, and began issuing clear, decisive orders. She recognized that saving lives took precedence over protecting equipment, a choice that some of her male counterparts had failed to make. Her calm demeanor under pressure impressed the evaluators, who had designed the exercise to create panic and confusion. Cadet Santos demonstrates exceptional composure and decision-making ability, noted Major Foster, the chief evaluator. Her response shows mature judgment beyond her years. When the evaluation results were posted 3 days later, Maria's name appeared at the top of the list. She had scored higher than any other cadet in her class, outperforming students who had attended elite preparatory schools and military academies. The reaction was immediate and intense. A crowd gathered around the posting board, reading and rereading the rankings in disbelief. Jake Morrison stared at the list with obvious anger, his face flushed red. "This has to be a mistake," he declared loudly. "There's no way. Maybe they're grading girls differently," suggested another cadet. Lower standards to make them feel better." But David Chen, who had been gradually warming to Maria since their first run, shook his head. "I watched her during the crisis simulation. She knew exactly what she was doing. Those scores are real." The whispers that had once questioned Maria's right to be at the academy now took on a sharper, more personal tone. Some cadets openly questioned the fairness of the evaluation process. Others suggested that political pressure had influenced the results. A few even hinted that inappropriate relationships with instructors might explain her success. Maria tried to ignore the comments, but they followed her everywhere. In the mess hall, conversation stopped when she approached. During study periods, she often found herself sitting alone, while others formed small groups. Even some of the female cadets seemed unsure how to treat her, worried that association with the top-ranked student might make them targets of resentment. The isolation was wearing on her spirit. She had worked so hard to prove herself, only to find that success brought its own problems. Late at night, she would lie in her bunk wondering if anything she did would ever be enough to earn genuine acceptance from her peers. Then came the leadership rotation assignments. Each cadet would take turns commanding their squad during various exercises, with their performance carefully evaluated. When Maria's first command assignment was announced, the reaction was immediate skepticism. "This should be entertaining," Jake Morrison muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see how she handles real leadership when people's lives depend on her decisions." Colonel Harrison happened to be walking past when Jake made his comment. The colonel stopped, turned slowly, and fixed Jake with a stare that could freeze fire. "Something to say, Cadet Morrison?" Jake straightened to attention, his earlier bravado evaporating. "No, sir, Colonel Harrison, sir." "Good," the colonel replied coldly, "because I'll be personally observing Cadet Santos's leadership exercise. I want to see exactly how she handles the responsibility." His eyes swept over the assembled cadets. "I want to see how you all handle it." The leadership exercise was scheduled for the following Tuesday, giving Maria 4 days to prepare. But those 4 days felt like the longest of her life. The pressure from her fellow cadets intensified, with some making it clear they hoped she would fail spectacularly. "Command is about respect," Jake Morrison told his friends during dinner, speaking loud enough for Maria to hear, "and respect has to be earned, not handed out because of political correctness." Maria focused on studying the exercise parameters. She would be leading a 12-person squad through a complex mission involving reconnaissance, tactical movement, and objective completion under simulated combat conditions. The exercise was designed to test decision-making under pressure, team coordination, and the ability to adapt when plans went wrong. She knew that half her squad members were secretly hoping she would fail. During the pre-mission briefing, she could see doubt and skepticism in their faces. Some barely made eye contact when she gave instructions. Others followed her orders with obvious reluctance, doing the minimum required. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold wind that cut through their uniforms. The exercise area was a wooded section of the academy grounds, complete with obstacles, hidden targets, and simulated enemy positions. Colonel Harrison stood with the other evaluators at the command post, his presence adding weight to every decision Maria would make. "Squad, fall in," Maria commanded, her voice carrying authority despite her nervousness. The 12 cadets formed up in front of her, their expressions ranging from professional neutrality to barely concealed hostility. The mission began with a 2-mile approach march to the target area. Maria had studied the terrain carefully and chose a route that provided good cover, while avoiding obvious choke points where an enemy might set ambushes. Some of her squad members questioned her path choice, suggesting more direct routes that would have been faster but more dangerous. "We're not in a race," Maria told them firmly. "Getting there alive is more important than getting there fast." During the march, the first test came when they encountered a simulated minefield. The exercise controllers had placed markers indicating dangerous areas that had to be navigated carefully. Maria called for a halt and studied the terrain, looking for patterns in the mine placement. "There," she pointed to a narrow path between the markers. "Single file exactly where I step. Morrison, you're second in line." Jake Morrison looked surprised to be given such a critical position. Following the squad leader through a minefield required absolute trust. One wrong step could mean simulated death for both of them. It was also a position of honor, traditionally given to the most trusted squad member. As they moved carefully through the simulated danger zone, Maria heard Jake whisper to the cadet behind him. She better know what she's doing. But Maria did know. Her chosen path was perfect, and the entire squad made it through without casualties. Even Jake had to admit grudgingly that her navigation had been flawless. The main objective was a simulated enemy communications post that had to be neutralized without alerting nearby forces. This required stealth, coordination, and precise timing. Maria divided her squad into 3 teams, one for overwatch, one for the assault, and one for security. "Chen, take 3 people and establish overwatch on that ridge," she ordered. "Give us early warning if enemy reinforcements approach. Morrison, you'll lead the assault team. I want a clean, quiet takedown of the communications post." Again, she had given Jake a position of responsibility, recognizing his skills despite his attitude toward her. This surprised both Jake and the other squad members who had expected her to sideline her biggest critic. The plan unfolded smoothly until the unexpected happened. Exercise controllers threw in a complication. Simulated civilians appeared near the target, making the assault much more difficult. This was the kind of curveball designed to test a leader's ability to adapt under pressure. Maria quickly assessed the new situation. The original plan would put civilians at risk, but a delay might allow enemy reinforcements to arrive. She had to make a decision fast, with Colonel Harrison and the other evaluators watching every move. "Change of plans," she announced over the radio. "Morrison, hold your position. Chen, can you get a clear line of sight to neutralize the communications equipment without entering the compound?" David Chen studied the target through his scope. "Affirmative. I can take out their antenna array from here." "Do it," Maria ordered. "But wait for my signal." She then radioed the security team to create a distraction on the opposite side of the compound, drawing the enemy guards away from the civilians. Once the guards moved, she gave Chen the signal to destroy the communications equipment. The mission succeeded with 0 civilian casualties and no detection by enemy forces. The exercise controllers, who had designed the civilian complication to create chaos and confusion, were impressed by Maria's quick thinking and adaptation. As the squad gathered for after-action review, something had changed in their demeanor. The successful completion of a difficult mission, with Maria's leadership being the key to their success, had shifted the dynamic within the group. "That was good thinking with the civilians," Jake Morrison admitted quietly, as they prepared to return to base. "I was ready to charge in and would have gotten them killed." David Chen nodded in agreement. "The overwatch position was perfect. You set us up to succeed." But not everyone was ready to accept Maria's competence. Back at the academy, some cadets who hadn't participated in the exercise questioned the results. "Probably an easy scenario," suggested one. "The instructors are probably going soft on the exercises now that girls are here." These comments reached Colonel Harrison, who had observed the entire exercise personally. His jaw tightened as he heard cadets dismissing Maria's achievement. The rumors and whispered dismissals were becoming a serious problem, affecting not just Maria but the entire academy's culture. That evening, Colonel Harrison made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Tomorrow morning we will have a special assembly," he declared during dinner. "Attendance is mandatory for all cadets. We need to address some issues that have come to my attention." The mess hall buzzed with speculation about what the colonel planned to discuss. Some cadets worried they might be in trouble for their comments about Maria. Others wondered if the female cadet program was about to be canceled. Maria felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. She had hoped her successful leadership exercise would quiet the whispers, but instead it seemed to have intensified them. Now Colonel Harrison was planning some kind of public address, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to be at the center of whatever happened next. That night, sleep came slowly. Through her dormitory window, she could see lights burning late in the male cadets building as groups gathered to discuss the upcoming assembly. Whatever Colonel Harrison planned to say tomorrow, it would change everything at the academy. The only question was whether it would change things for better or worse. The assembly hall filled with nervous energy as cadets filed in for Colonel Harrison's mandatory meeting. Maria took a seat near the middle, trying to appear calm despite the churning anxiety in her stomach. Around her, whispered conversations died as officers took their positions on the platform. Colonel Harrison entered with his characteristic precision, his uniform immaculate and his bearing commanding instant silence. Behind him walked Major Foster, Sergeant Rodriguez, and other senior staff members, their faces revealing nothing about the purpose of this gathering. "Cadets," the colonel began, his voice carrying easily through the large hall without amplification. "I've been observing academy life for the past several weeks, and I've noticed some concerning trends that need to be addressed immediately." He paused, his gray eyes scanning the assembled faces. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats, wondering if their private comments had somehow reached the colonel's ears. "This academy has a proud tradition spanning 50 years, he continued. "We have produced leaders who served with distinction in conflicts around the world. Our graduates have commanded respect through their competence, character, and commitment to excellence." Maria held her breath, sensing that whatever came next would be directed at her situation. "But tradition without evolution is stagnation," Colonel Harrison declared, his voice gaining intensity. "The military is changing, and we must change with it. The inclusion of female cadets in our program represents progress, not compromise." A ripple of tension passed through the hall. Some cadets nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical or uncomfortable. However, the colonel's voice sharpened. "I have become aware of certain attitudes and behaviors that are unworthy of this institution. There are cadets among you who seem to believe that membership in this academy is determined by anything other than merit, dedication, and performance." Jake Morrison's face flushed red, and several other cadets studied their hands intensely, afraid to meet the colonel's gaze. "Let me be absolutely clear," Colonel Harrison continued, his words falling like hammer blows. "Every cadet in this room earned their place here through the same rigorous selection process. Every cadet is held to the same standards, and every cadet deserves the respect that comes with wearing this uniform." The hall was deadly quiet now. Even the officers behind the colonel stood at rigid attention, recognizing the importance of this moment. "I've heard whispers that some cadets believe political pressure or special consideration influenced admission decisions. I've heard suggestions that academic or physical standards have been lowered. These rumors are not only false, they are destructive to the very foundation of what we do here." Maria felt dozens of eyes turning toward her, and her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had hoped to prove herself quietly, without becoming the center of academy-wide controversy. "Yesterday," the colonel continued, "I personally observed a leadership exercise that demonstrated exactly what this academy is supposed to produce. The squad leader adapted to changing conditions, made sound tactical decisions under pressure, and completed the mission with 0 casualties." He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering what everyone knew was coming. That squad leader was Cadet Santos, who currently holds the highest academic ranking in her class and has consistently exceeded physical fitness standards. Her performance was not remarkable because she is female. It was remarkable because she demonstrated superior judgment, preparation, and leadership ability. The silence in the hall was so complete that Maria could hear her own heartbeat. Some cadets looked genuinely surprised, as if they were hearing about her achievements for the first time. Others appeared uncomfortable, realizing their assumptions had been wrong. But this is not about one cadet, Colonel Harrison emphasized. This is about all of you. In the military, your life may one day depend on the competence of the person next to you. Their gender, background, or appearance will be irrelevant when bullets start flying. What will matter is their training, their judgment, and their commitment to the mission. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform, his presence somehow filling the entire hall. I have served in combat alongside soldiers of every background imaginable. I have seen courage displayed by people who defied every stereotype and expectation. I have also seen prejudice get people killed when it prevented effective teamwork and communication. The weight of his combat experience gave his words undeniable authority. Several cadets who had been skeptical about the female cadet program began to look thoughtful rather than resistant. From this moment forward, the colonel announced, I will not tolerate any behavior that undermines unit cohesion or individual performance based on irrelevant characteristics. Comments, jokes, or actions that create a hostile environment for any cadet will result in immediate disciplinary action, up to and including expulsion from this academy. Jake Morrison and his friends exchanged worried glances, realizing their whispered conversations might have consequences they hadn't considered. Excellence has no gender, Colonel Harrison declared, his voice rising to emphasize the point. It has no race, no social class, no family background. Excellence is demonstrated through performance, and performance is what we measure here. He gestured toward Maria without calling her by name. When a cadet consistently outperforms their peers, we celebrate that achievement. We learn from it. We use it to raise our own standards. We do not diminish it through petty resentment or unfounded speculation about favoritism. The colonel's words hit their target with precision. Several cadets who had been Maria's harshest critics looked ashamed, finally understanding how their behavior appeared to academy leadership. This academy exists to forge leaders, he continued. Leaders who can see past surface differences to recognize competence and character. Leaders who can build effective teams from diverse personnel. Leaders who understand that strength comes from unity of purpose, not uniformity of background. Major Foster stepped forward and whispered something to the colonel, who nodded curtly. I am implementing several changes effective immediately, Colonel Harrison announced. First, all cadets will participate in enhanced team-building exercises designed to break down barriers and build mutual respect. Second, academic and physical performance rankings will be posted publicly each month, so there is no confusion about who is earning their place here. Some cadets looked nervous about the increased transparency, while others seemed relieved that merit would be clearly visible to everyone. Third, the colonel continued, senior cadets will be assigned as mentors to help newer students adapt to academy life. These assignments will be based solely on performance and leadership potential. Regardless of any other factors, he paused, letting the implications sink in before delivering his final point. Finally, I want to make something perfectly clear to every person in this room. The whispers stop today. The speculation ends now. If you have concerns about academy policies or individual performance, you will bring them to me directly through proper channels. What you will not do is undermine your fellow cadets through gossip and innuendo. The colonel's eyes swept across the assembly one final time, making contact with as many cadets as possible. We are training the next generation of military leaders. That is a sacred responsibility that requires us to recognize and develop excellence wherever we find it. I expect each of you to meet that standard. He stepped back and stood at attention. Dismissed. As cadets filed out of the assembly hall, the atmosphere was markedly different from when they had entered. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. Several cadets approached Maria as she gathered her things, offering words of congratulations on her recent achievements. But Maria noticed something else. Colonel Harrison remained on the platform, watching as the cadets left. When their eyes met across the emptying hall, he gave her a slight nod of acknowledgement before turning to speak with the other officers. The message was clear. The colonel had not just defended her right to be at the academy, he had publicly endorsed her performance and potential. The whispers that had followed her since arrival would find no encouragement from academy leadership. But Maria also understood that words alone wouldn't change everyone's mind. The real test would come in the days and weeks ahead, as she and her fellow cadets learned to work together under the new expectations Colonel Harrison had established. The days following Colonel Harrison's address brought a noticeable shift in academy life. The overt hostility that had shadowed Maria's every step began to fade, replaced by a more complex dynamic of grudging respect mixed with cautious curiosity. Jake Morrison was among the first to change his approach. During weapons training the day after the assembly, he found himself paired with Maria for marksmanship practice. Instead of the snide comments she had grown accustomed to, he offered genuine technical advice. "Your stance is solid, but try adjusting your grip slightly," he suggested, demonstrating the proper technique. "It'll help with your follow-up shots." Maria followed his advice and immediately saw improvement in her accuracy. "Thanks," she said, surprised by his helpful tone. That makes a real difference. It was a small moment, but it represented something larger, the possibility that merit could overcome prejudice given time and leadership. The enhanced team-building exercises Colonel Harrison had mandated began the following week. Unlike the competitive atmosphere that had characterized earlier training, these sessions focused on cooperation and mutual dependence. Cadets were randomly assigned to mixed groups and given tasks that required everyone's contribution to succeed. During one particularly challenging exercise, Maria found herself working with 5 male cadets to navigate a complex obstacle course that couldn't be completed by any individual alone. Success required precise timing, communication, and trust. "Santos, we need you to anchor the rope while Chen and I climb the wall," explained Tommy Rodriguez, a quiet cadet from Texas who had previously avoided any interaction with the female cadets. "Can you hold our weight?" The question was practical, not dismissive. Maria had proven her physical capabilities, and now her teammates were treating her as an equal contributor, rather than a liability to work around. "Absolutely," she replied, taking position and bracing herself. "Just give me clear signals about when you're putting your full weight on the line." The exercise succeeded, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, Maria felt like a genuine member of a team rather than an outsider being tolerated. Academic performance continued to be Maria's strongest area. When the monthly rankings were posted as Colonel Harrison had promised, her name remained at the top of the list. But now, instead of whispered accusations of favoritism, her achievements sparked something different. Study groups. "Santos, you want to help us with the military history assignment?" asked David Chen one evening in the library. "That analysis of the Korean War strategy is kicking our butails." Soon, Maria found herself at the center of informal tutoring sessions, helping classmates understand complex tactical concepts and historical parallels. Her ability to break down complicated ideas into understandable components made her a valuable resource that others genuinely appreciated. "You should consider becoming an instructor after graduation," suggested Jennifer Walsh, one of the other female cadets who had initially been intimidated by Maria's success. "You have a gift for explaining things clearly, but the real test of the changing dynamics came during the Academy's most challenging exercise of the semester, a week-long field training exercise that would test everything they had learned about leadership, tactics, and teamwork. The exercise scenario involved a complex mission with multiple objectives spread across hundreds of acres of wilderness. Cadets would be divided into competing teams, with success measured not just by objective completion, but by leadership effectiveness and team cohesion. When team assignments were announced, Maria found herself designated as the overall commander of Team Alpha, a 12-person unit that included some of the Academy's strongest performers and some of her former critics. Jake Morrison was assigned as her executive officer, a position that required close cooperation and mutual trust. Tommy Rodriguez would lead the communications team, while David Chen commanded the reconnaissance element. The diversity of the team, both in terms of gender and background, reflected Colonel Harrison's vision of modern military leadership. "This is it," Maria told her team during their first planning session. "This exercise counts for 30% of our semester grade, and the winning team gets recognition at the graduation ceremony. But more importantly, this is our chance to prove that we can work together effectively." She looked around the circle of faces, seeing attention and respect where once there had been skepticism and hostility. "I'm not going to pretend I know everything," she continued. "Each of you has strengths that I'm counting on. Morrison, your tactical knowledge is better than mine in urban combat scenarios. Chen, your fieldcraft skills are outstanding. Rodriguez, You understand communications technology better than anyone in our class. This approach, acknowledging others' expertise while maintaining command authority, impressed her team members. Previous exercise commanders had often tried to dominate every aspect of planning, leading to resentment and poor performance. The exercise began at dawn on Monday with teams scattered across different starting positions. Maria's first decision was crucial: which objectives to pursue in what order, with limited time and resources. After studying the terrain and mission parameters, she chose an unconventional approach that prioritized intelligence gathering over immediate action. While other teams rushed toward obvious targets, Team Alpha spent their first day conducting thorough reconnaissance and mapping enemy positions. "Are you sure about this?" Jake Morrison asked privately as they watched other teams engage in firefights during the first afternoon. "We're falling behind on objective completion." "Trust the plan," Maria replied calmly. "Intelligence wins wars, not heroics." Her patience proved wise. By the second day, Team Alpha had a complete picture of enemy dispositions and defensive patterns. While other teams struggled with unexpected resistance and failed assaults, Maria's unit began systematically achieving objectives with minimal casualties. The turning point came on Wednesday when Team Bravo, led by Marcus Thompson, found themselves pinned down by a superior enemy force. Their desperate radio calls for assistance reached all teams in the area. Maria faced a critical decision. Helping Team Bravo would cost precious time and resources, potentially preventing her team from completing their own objectives. But it was also a chance to demonstrate the values Colonel Harrison had emphasized, that cadets supported each other regardless of competition. "We're going to help them," she announced to her team. "But that could cost us the exercise," Tommy Rodriguez pointed out. "Some things are more important than winning," Maria replied firmly. "If we can't help fellow cadets when they're in trouble, we don't deserve to be leaders." The rescue mission required precise coordination and considerable risk. Maria's team had to approach the enemy positions without being detected, then execute a coordinated assault that would break the siege without causing casualties to the trapped cadets. Using Chen's reconnaissance skills and Morrison's tactical expertise, they developed a plan that struck the enemy from 3 directions simultaneously. The assault succeeded brilliantly, rescuing Team Bravo and eliminating the enemy force. Marcus Thompson, whose initial attitude toward Maria had been particularly dismissive, found himself genuinely grateful for her intervention. "You saved our exercise," he told her as they regrouped. "I won't forget that." But the rescue had indeed cost Team Alpha precious time. With only 2 days remaining, they faced a nearly impossible task of completing enough objectives to win the exercise. That's when something unexpected happened. Word of the rescue spread among all the teams, and several commanders approached Maria with an unprecedented proposal: temporary alliance to complete shared objectives that would benefit everyone. "The exercise parameters allow for inter-team cooperation," explained Sarah Mitchell, commander of Team Delta. "If we work together on the final phase, we can all achieve better results than competing separately." It was a novel approach that reflected the collaborative leadership style Maria had demonstrated throughout the academy. Instead of viewing other teams as enemies to defeat, she had shown them how cooperation could benefit everyone. Colonel Harrison, monitoring the exercise from the command post, watched this development with keen interest. The spontaneous alliance forming around Maria's leadership represented exactly the kind of thinking he wanted to see in future military officers. The final day of the field exercise dawned with unexpected developments that would test everything the cadets had learned about leadership and cooperation. Heavy rain had turned the terrain treacherous, and exercise controllers had introduced new complications designed to simulate real combat chaos. Maria stood in the command tent, studying updated maps with her newly formed coalition of team leaders. The alliance she had proposed now included 4 of the 6 teams, working together to complete the most challenging objectives of the exercise. "The weather changes everything," observed Sarah Mitchell, wiping rain from her tactical display. "Those ridge objectives are going to be nearly impossible to reach safely." Jake Morrison, now fully committed to Maria's leadership approach, studied the terrain with professional focus. "Unless we use the creek bed approach. It's longer, but much safer in these conditions." The transformation in Jake's attitude had been remarkable to witness. The cadet who had once questioned Maria's right to be at the academy now offered suggestions with genuine respect and collaboration. His change of heart had influenced others, creating a ripple effect throughout the exercise. "That's good thinking," Maria agreed, marking the alternate route on her map. "But we'll need perfect timing to coordinate 4 teams moving through that narrow approach." David Chen looked up from his radio equipment. "Communications are going to be difficult in this terrain, especially with the weather interference. We need backup plans for when primary comms fail." The complexity of managing multiple teams under adverse conditions was exactly what Colonel Harrison had intended. These were the kinds of challenges that separated competent officers from truly exceptional leaders. As the coalition began executing their coordinated assault on the final objectives, Maria found herself managing not just her own team, but serving as the overall coordinator for nearly 50 cadets. It was a responsibility that would have seemed impossible when she first arrived at the academy, facing whispers about her competence. The radio crackled with updates from across the operational area. "Team Alpha reports objective. Secured. Team Delta encountering heavy resistance at Checkpoint 3. Team Charlie requesting immediate support at grid reference 437291. Maria processed each update quickly, adjusting plans and redistributing resources as needed. Her ability to maintain situational awareness while making rapid decisions impressed even the exercise controllers monitoring the action. "Send Team Alpha's second squad to support Charlie," she directed, "and have Delta fall back to alternate position. Baker will hit Checkpoint 3 from a different angle. The revised plan required Teams Alpha and Delta to coordinate a complex flanking maneuver while Team Charlie provided distraction. Success depended on precise timing and flawless communication between units that had been competing against each other just days earlier." As the maneuver unfolded, Colonel Harrison arrived at the forward observation post to personally monitor the final phase. Major Foster and other senior officers accompanied him, recognizing that something unprecedented was happening in the exercise. "Remarkable coordination," Major Foster observed, watching multiple teams move in perfect synchronization despite the challenging conditions. "I've never seen cadets achieve this level of inter-unit cooperation during competitive exercises." Colonel Harrison nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing Maria's position as she directed the complex operation. "She's turned a competition into a collaboration. That's advanced leadership thinking." The coordinated assault succeeded brilliantly. Checkpoint 3 fell to the combined teams Charlie and Delta, while Team Alpha secured the ridge positions that had seemed impossible in the morning. By late afternoon, the coalition had completed more objectives than any single team could have achieved alone. But the real measure of success came during the final scenario, a simulated casualty evacuation that required immediate response under enemy fire. When the exercise controllers announced that Marcus Thompson had been wounded and needed emergency extraction, every team in the coalition immediately diverted resources to help. Maria coordinated the rescue with the same calm competence she had shown throughout the week. Teams provided covering fire while medics reached the casualty, and the evacuation proceeded smoothly despite simulated enemy attacks. "Outstanding work," called out the exercise controller as the final scenario concluded. Exercise terminated. All teams returned to base for debriefing. As the exhausted cadets gathered their equipment and began the march back to academy grounds, the atmosphere was markedly different from the beginning of the week. Conversations flowed freely between teams that had started as competitors. Cadets who had once whispered about Maria's qualifications now sought her advice on tactical problems. "That flanking maneuver was textbook perfect," Marcus Thompson told her as they walked through the forest. "Where did you learn to coordinate multiple units like that?" "Same place you learned urban combat tactics," Maria replied with a tired smile. "Right here at the academy. The instructors teach everyone the same principles. I just tried to apply them to a larger scale." Jake Morrison, walking beside them, shook his head in amazement. "I've got to admit, Santos, when you first arrived, I thought you were going to wash out in the first week. I was completely wrong about you." The honest admission carried weight because it came from someone who had been among her harshest critics. Other cadets who overheard the comment nodded in agreement, acknowledging their own changed perspectives. "We were all wrong about a lot of things," admitted Tommy Rodriguez. I thought leadership was about being the toughest or the loudest. You showed us it's about bringing out the best in everyone around you. The debriefing session that evening was unlike any in Academy history. Instead of the usual competitive atmosphere where teams guarded their tactical secrets, there was open discussion about what had worked and what could be improved. Colonel Harrison presided over the session with evident satisfaction. When he called Maria forward to explain her decision-making process during the exercise, the room filled with attentive silence. The key insight, Maria explained to the assembled cadets and officers, was recognizing that the exercise objectives aligned better with our training goals if we worked together rather than against each other. Competition has its place, but cooperation builds stronger leaders. She gestured toward her fellow team commanders. Each team brought unique strengths. Instead of trying to do everything ourselves, we leveraged everyone's capabilities. That's what we'll need to do as officers in the real military. Colonel Harrison stepped forward as Maria concluded her presentation. Outstanding analysis, Cadet Santos. You've demonstrated that the highest form of leadership isn't about personal achievement. It's about elevating everyone around you to achieve collective success. He turned to address the entire assembly. This exercise has shown me that our academy is producing exactly the kind of leaders our military needs. Leaders who can see past surface differences to recognize and utilize the strengths of diverse personnel. Leaders who understand that unity of purpose is more powerful than individual excellence. The colonel's words carried special meaning because everyone present had witnessed the transformation that had occurred over the past semester. The cadets who had once questioned whether women belonged at the academy now saw competence and character as the only relevant qualifications. When the final rankings for the exercise were announced, Team Alpha had achieved the highest score in academy history. But more importantly, the coalition Maria had organized had raised the performance level of every participating team. As cadets dispersed to their dormitories that night, the whispered conversations that had once undermined Maria's confidence were replaced by discussions of tactics, leadership philosophy, and mutual respect. The academy that had felt hostile and unwelcoming during her first week now felt like a true community of future military leaders. Colonel Harrison watched from his office window as cadets crossed the courtyard in mixed groups, their conversations animated and inclusive. The transformation he had demanded in his assembly address had become reality through demonstrated excellence and moral courage. The girl they had whispered was out of place had proven that place is earned through competence, not given through circumstance. And in doing so, she had helped create an academy worthy of the leaders it was meant to produce. Maria Santos had not just found her place at the Military Leadership Academy. She had helped redefine what that place could be for everyone who would follow.